video with a very special guest of mine, the one and only Josh Revell. Thank you for agreeing to do this episode with me, Josh. Nice to have you on.
Thanks very much, Raz. Good to be here.
So I thought today's topic, we talk about Lance Stroll for a bit. So let's just, and what I want to talk about is, do you think he deserves to be in Formula One, or is he just another pay driver, or is he just in Formula One because of his dad?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people that obviously know about me and Lance Stroll, and they're like, oh, yeah, Josh hates Stroll. I don't hate Stroll that much, no. All right, so when we talk about just another pay driver, pay drivers in Formula One, the sport was founded upon drivers who have come into Formula One with money, paying for drives, playboys driving in it. So I don't look at the pay driver aspect too much. It only comes to my attention when there are some drivers who are just not good enough for the game. I don't know if Lance necessarily fits that mold. It's just after 3 years, I could probably count about a handful of times where I've gone, that's an exceptional drive. So Baku, people say he was lucky in Baku. I don't necessarily think he was. He took advantage of other people's misfortune, and, that's just motor racing. But for me, if you look at how he went in qualifying in Monza in 2017, that was a great drive. And that is something where when I watched him in Junior Formula, I thought, well, that's the Lance Stroll that I know. But he just hasn't been able to replicate that in recent years. And so I'm just looking at him after 3 years. I'm going, has he done enough on merit? And the answer to that is no. But having said that, he's got a good car with Racing Point this year, if the season gets going at all. And, if he performs well, if he gets his qualifying up to scratch, his race pace is not bad at all. So, all jokes aside from the ones I put in the video, I think Stroll's got potential. He just needs to actually carry it out. And, if Perez does well in the upcoming season and Stroll doesn't, I think that's when you got to go, okay, is Stroll good enough to be here on merit? And right now, that's up in the air.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Lance got a lot of stick when he first got into Formula One, because obviously his dad financed a lot of his career. So would he got into Formula One if it wasn't for his dad? I'm not entirely convinced. Having said that, I mean, when you look at the likes of Michael Schumacher, I mean, he essentially was a paid driver because he got sponsored by Mercedes to start with. You know what I mean? So I think he gets a lot of stick, and justified, to be honest. I've totally gone 180 on my opinion on him, because when I did my first collaboration with the F1 debate show, I was sort of laying into him, but I've since sort of grown to like him a bit, or grown to sort of change my opinion about him. The only thing that I'm worried about is that because his dad has now bought Racing Point, is he stuck at that team for the whole of his career?
I think really that's up to both of them, because Lawrence Stroll, he hasn't got a lot of money by being stupid. He's a smart person. He's a businessman. If tough changes need to be made, I'm sure that he'll implement them. So in this case, if Lance isn't up to scratch it's a bit difficult this year, obviously, with the situation going on. So realistically, you'd have to give Lance Stroll until the end of 2021, realistically, to give a fair judgment in regards to whether or not he's fit for Formula One. At the moment, I don't necessarily think he's one of the best 20 drivers in the world, but whether or not he deserves to be in Formula One, I think, given the situation, it's going to be difficult to judge anyone if we get a season running at all this year. So next year will be a bit more of a fair judgment. And in regards to the paid driver situation and him getting a lot of stick, especially with joining Racing Point, as I said, pay drivers and such have built the sport. They've helped, teams survive.
Yeah.
With Nicholas Latifi, Michael Latifi, his father, just I think it was a security loan for Williams. So
yeah.
it should help the security of the Williams team. And really, as long as we keep teams on the grid, that's the most important thing. Because the last thing we would have wanted is Force India or Racing Point dropping out of Formula One entirely. So
that
look at it from that aspect.
That would have been a disaster. So, but do you actually think we are going to get a season going this season?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think it depends upon whether or not events could be run behind closed doors or not, because I think that's a compromise for now, that we will have events run behind closed doors. I am doubting that we're going to get any events with fans at all. So one thing that not a lot of people actually are aware of is that in Japan, for the Japanese Grand Prix in October, they've actually postponed the ticket sales last week. And they're also taking down temporary stands around the circuit. So that tells me that they're not expecting, fans to be in attendance this year. And that event's in October. So it's pretty damning when you think about it, that is the situation with the races going on this year. But nevertheless, I think it's important for the sport, and it's definitely important for teams like Williams to get the season going, get it underway. But it's going to be very touch and go as to whether or not we're going to get a full season this year. Well, rather a calendar that's, 10 races or more. It's going to be absolutely touch and go.
I mean, from what I know, I don't know whether I'm wrong, but as far as I know, we only need 8 races to have a valid championship or something.
Yeah, that's right.
So, what they could do, I've thought about this, what they could do, because China is pretty much clear now, isn't it? So why don't they go to China and the places where they've pretty much cleared the virus and do it there rather than going to Europe where it seems to be where it seems to be hot at the minute, where it seems to be like touch and go whether they're going to deal with it or not.
I guess it's difficult, obviously the FIA, Liberty Media, Formula One, they're all in touch with all the venues in regards to the situation that's going on, because we can't have something like there was in Melbourne, where you have, 20, 30,000 fans outside the gate, and all of a sudden you've got, a real problem on your hands. And especially since they didn't announce that until very, very late. I was actually meant to be flying over from New Zealand to go over to the Grand Prix, and they didn't announce it until about 5 hours before my flight. So it was very, very late, and they obviously can't have that again because that was such a PR black eye for Formula One. So they're obviously being very skittish. They want to get a season going right away, obviously, but they've got to be careful. They cannot afford something like that again. And with China, it's a hard one to judge, really, in regards to whether or not the situation has, in all actuality, calmed down. I hope it has, and I think it's scheduled for the Asian section of the revised calendar. So it's going to be run in about October, September, from my recollection, alongside Japan. And if that's the case, that's good. They've got the first 6 Grand Prix are being run at 3 circuits. The first 2 at Red Bull Ring, the next 2 at Silverstone, the next 2 at the Hungaroring Ring. But all of those will be behind closed doors because of the stuff going on. But in regards to China, yeah, we just don't know. It's a total unknown in regards to what's going to happen.
And on that point, I mean, coming back to what we were saying earlier about Lawrence Stroll bailing out Racing Point. Do you actually? I'm actually scared for the Williams team that it's going to be taken over by Michael Latifi completely, because if we don't get a season going, because from what I gather, they are really struggling.
Yeah, I guess it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. I personally think that the worst case scenario is not a team takeover. The worst situation is a team going off the grid completely. Now, if the team is taken over by Michael Latifi, it could go either one or two ways. It could either be taken over completely and have a name change, but I'm not 100% certain that would happen. I think what most likely will happen is the team will still be run under Williams because it's obviously got some marquee value as a team that's been in there since the 1970s. But there will definitely be a change of management and stuff. And Claire Williams, I think, would probably get a lesser role in the team, not necessarily be shunned out, but something does need to change because obviously what's happened in the last few years just hasn't worked. And it's not the driver's fault, obviously. They have not had bad drivers in that team. I know I give Lance Stroll some crap, but he's not a bad driver. He's just not really hitting the points at the moment, and his qualifying has really let him down. But apart from that, they haven't had bad drivers. You know, they've had Valtteri Bottas, Felipe Massa, George Russell, Robert Kubica, even though Kubica's last stint wasn't that great in comparison to what he did before, but nevertheless, he wasn't a bad driver. Even the likes of Sergei Sorokin, you know, Sorokin was very, very good driver in GP2 and Junior Formula. And, you know, so you can't necessarily say that he's a bad driver either. They really haven't had bad drivers, but their cars have just been horrible. So, you know, something's got to happen. And, you know, if Latifi's going to invest tens of millions of euros into a team, then he's not going to just say, okay, run it the same as before. So, it's very difficult. I guess it's down to whether or not it's down to Latifi's intentions, whether or not he wants his own Formula One team. But we'll just have to see.
I mean, what I did a video. I did a video a couple of days ago. I don't know whether you've seen it. Where I said Lewis Hamilton to Aston Martin next in 2021, because obviously Racing Point is going to become Aston Martin. So, and I've actually said in that video that I think that he would replace Lance Stroll. What's your take on that one?
I think that's an interesting point. I'm not necessarily sure about that because I think their lineup at Racing Point going on to Aston Martin, I think it's a good lineup so far. Sergio Perez obviously is a very good driver, very good at putting midfield cars onto the podium, and you know his input to the team will be invaluable. In regards to whether or not they replace Stroll, I think everyone knows that Lance has obviously got a bigger slice of the pie in terms of his place in the team, obviously with the connection to his father. So I can't necessarily see that happening. If Hamilton were to go to Aston Martin, he would probably replace Perez, in fact, because obviously Lawrence would want as much help for Lance as possible. And I'm not trying to make excuses for Lance at all, but with what Lawrence has invested in Lance's career, you wouldn't think that when it comes to replacing two drivers in a team, that it would come down to Lance. So, yeah, no, it'll be interesting if Hamilton does go to Racing Point, because I think that'll be the last piece in the puzzle, to help get that team to the front. But, this is Formula One. Stranger things have happened. Who would have thought that Damon Hill would have gone to Arrows in 1997? So, yeah, we'll never know.
Yeah, I'm convinced. Yeah, I'm almost 100% certain that Lewis Hamilton will go to Aston Martin, because, and I'm also convinced that Toto Wolff is going to become the team principal of Aston Martin, because I think Mercedes are gonna pull out of Formula One.
Yep, and yet you raise an interesting point there, because Toto Wolff has actually he's actually invested quite a bit of money into Aston Martin lately.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's an interesting point you bring up there. Very valid. Yeah. Okay. Well, that'll be interesting.
I get a lot of stick on social media for it, especially on Facebook. People just seem to look at the thumbnail and just saying that it's not going to happen. But I'm actually convinced that it will happen, because, as I said, I think Mercedes going to concentrate on Formula E rather than Formula One.
Yeah, that's very true. And they've recently downsized other championships such as DTM. So yeah, the more you think about it, the more plausible it becomes. In regards to people giving you a stick about that, at the end of the day, that's just people on social media for you. There'll always be some troglodytes out there that will have opinion of their own. Oh, you're wrong, and then 2 months later something comes up and you're like, oh, what did I tell you? So yeah, that's something I don't think you really should pay any mind, dude. At the end of the day, we're all you're getting a very valid reason for that.
It's just a bit of fun, really, isn't it? At the end of the day, we all like a bit of conversation, and that's what I'm doing. It's in regards to Lance Stroll being replaced by Lewis Hamilton. The reason why I'm saying that is because Lawrence Stroll has apparently set out a 4-year plan when he took over to make Aston Martin, or Racing Point, shall I say, at the minute, a front runner in the championship. And I think I doubt whether Lance Stroll would be capable of fighting for the front.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. But at the same time, I think if I may deviate for a minute and go to Ferrari, I think what Ferrari needs to do right now is that they need a solid number 1 and number 2 driver.
Yeah.
So what I would say is, okay, Charles Leclerc is a number 1 driver because he's a long-term option. He's got a lot of potential. And he's a good lad. And number 2 driver, I put in Antonio Giovinazzi, because while he's good enough for race wins, he's not someone who's going to pester Leclerc to a point where it's going to hamper the team. And so from there, you've got a stable lineup. They're not going to wreck each other much. Well, Giovinazzi's Italian, so you never know. And overall, you've got a good combination there. With Perez with Hamilton, I find that a tad bit dangerous, because Perez, the last time he had a teammate that was on his level, or rather, he could. Sorry, let me rephrase that. So, 2013, Sergio Perez was signed up to McLaren. teaming up with Jenson Button, and that did not go well. And forgetting about the reliability issues and the fact that the McLaren handled like a dog on a rug, it was not a good relationship between Perez and Button, because Perez overstepped Mark several times in an attempt to, battle Button. Not that he couldn't, but, that's the danger that can happen. So with Lance being a teammate to Hamilton, I find it's the same deal with the Leclerc-Giovinazzi thing. Stroll in a very competitive car could, be a good rear gunner. I think if he gets his qualifying up, he can definitely pick up the pieces in case things go wrong with Hamilton. But, Aston Martin are going to be with a fair amount of money, with this upcoming, transition through the consortium led by Lance Stroll. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, and it'll be equally as interesting to see whether or not Hamilton makes that jump, because if it does, it's going to throw a lot of things into disarray, really. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see that.
I'm almost 100% convinced, because the reason why I'm thinking Hamilton might go as well, because I think that Toto Wolff and Hamilton have got a really good relationship, and I think sort of that would be their last hurrah together before they both retire and move away from Formula One.
Yeah, that's very valid, really. I mean, as I said, stranger things have happened in Formula One, obviously, so it'll be very interesting to see. Just so long as they're not sponsored by Rich Energy, because good grief, we don't want William Story back on the grid.
No, I mean, that was a disaster, wasn't it? I mean, what I'm interested to know, maybe you know a bit more about it, because obviously the Formula One drivers have got contracts for 2020, yeah?
Yep.
Like the likes of, like Latifi and stuff, and people like that. But obviously we haven't got any races, and obviously there's a lot of teams, especially like Williams, that are struggling. So are these contracts just nil and void, or what? I mean, I would like to know what the situation is with the contracts, because if we don't have any races in 2020, then do they get an automatic renewal for 2021, or do you know anything about that?
Well, it depends upon a million things. The clauses in each contract, and obviously they'll differ from team to team. It'll be a legal cluster F, So I think really if the proposed calendar is seen through and we get 15 to 16 races, then we would get a full calendar, because races get cancelled rarely, but it does happen. So I'm guessing the contract would probably stipulate a full F1 season. If that's the case, then technically an 8 race season would be classified as a full F1 season. It's hard. I don't know what's in the contracts, and I don't really know what's stipulated. I'm not sure, but contracts could be annulled just like that if the team so wishes. It really is very dependent. So in regards to some of these drivers and their contracts, I think it's really down to what the team wants to do. And I fear that, speaking of that, Haas, especially if we're not going to get a lot of races this year, Haas are out. And you're going to have Magnussen and Grosjean on the driver market. I mean, Magnussen, I think, is good. He just needs to calm down. But Romain Grosjean, he seems to just be strong. He's such a frustrating driver. He's when he's on it, he is a very good driver. And especially at the end of 2013, he seemed to be the only person that was legitimately challenging Sebastian Vettel for a time. But when he does not have the proper support behind him, he just folds. And, you know, it's not good. It's very sad to see that sort of stuff happening. And because of that, it's unlikely that it'll be picked up again. So, you know, Haas will be losing more than just a than just a team. Will also be losing, you know, two drivers who really should have a shot in Formula One, you know, provided they have the correct management behind them. So, yeah, well, I guess it's sort of a waiting game to see what happens in regards to driver contracts, but I don't really think there's going to be too much change, really.
Because do you actually? Because the only race that I know that's confirmed is, or as much as confirmed, is the Austrian Grand Prix.
Yeah.
But is there a provisional calendar out yet, or are they just doing it race by race now?
Well, I mean, they'll obviously have some sort of calendar outlined, and they'll have, you know, they'll be confirming races basically sort of based on the situation as it evolves. But with they had a proposed F1 calendar where, as I said, the first two events were in Austria, the next two at Silverstone, the next two at Hungaroring, and I'm sure they would have been in contact with those event organisers and saying, okay, here's the proposed plan, just so you know that you guys can get ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I'm asking that is because I obviously don't want to miss any races. So if you or anyone else has got any information about the times and when it becomes available, let me know. All right? Is that?
Yep. Well, I mean, they'll be confirming obviously in advance because they'll be, you know, trying to get TV schedules and so forth.
Yeah.
So I think we'll get an idea because they're proposing it in July. So toward the end of this month, the start of June, we're going to get a bit more clear picture. But yeah, it really does depend upon the situation, and obviously it's sort of a day by day thing.
Because the other thing one has to worry about, or that I'm a bit worried about, is, I mean, with the corona, with the virus actually affecting the economy, are manufacturers gonna pull out because they may just think a sort of Formula One is a bit of a waste of, like, not waste of time, but sort of a bit of a luxury, and we can't afford it because we got to concentrate on saving our main car business.
Well, Audi pulled out of DTM was partially down to the pandemic. So I'm sure teams will be evaluating their options. I think the only car manufacturers, from memory, I mean, McLaren kind of is, but you know they've been in Formula One longer than they've been a manufacturer, a car manufacturer anyway. There's Ferrari, but obviously Ferrari have their own sort of, you know, again, same as McLaren. They've been in Formula One longer than well, no, that's not right. But I mean, but racing's part of their history. Mercedes, you know, there's been rumblings of them quitting for ages, and this may be the straw that breaks the camel's back. For sure. Aston Martin won't because they're coming into the game and it's owned by Lance Stroll and his consortium. And obviously Toto Wolff has invested some money into it. And as well, Aston Martin do need all the help they can get financially and publicity-wise because their company is really in dire straits. So I don't think that's going to hinder their entry into the Formula One grid. Otherwise, I think if any car manufacturer is looking to pull out of Formula One, it would be Mercedes. And yeah, as I said, you know, they've been saying for a while or at least there's been rumours for a while that they're going to quit, and this may just be the thing that ultimately makes them pull the trigger on it.
So, do you think Lewis Hamilton knows something that we don't know, because he still hasn't confirmed his contract, neither has Toto Wolff? I mean, that is the one thing that makes me think he's off to Aston Martin or something.
Yeah. I don't know. It's such a 50-50 thing, really. It's sort of, obviously, they know all the info. They've been pretty much keeping their cards close to their chest. It'll be interesting, but given all the information, it's very possible. It's very possible.
How did you get into Formula One anyway? How did you get into Formula One?
Me? It all started because my first console was a PlayStation 1, and the first game I got was Formula 1 2001. So played that for a while, loved it. Watched the Formula 1 highlights on the local channel, and the interest just grew from there. So now I'm a savant.
Yeah. So do you have withdrawal symptoms already? Because I'm starting to have withdrawal symptoms.
Yeah, I think we all do, eh? We just want the Formula 1 season to get back on running. I mean, we're going to get some racing. NASCAR, I mean, even though NASCAR is about as boring as watching paint dry when it's already dry, it's going to be something, and we're all going to be watching it. And when Formula 1 gets back on track, it's, we never know how much we miss Formula 1 until this happened, for sure. So, but I mean, we got a lot of good stuff. We got a lot of good F1 YouTubers out there. We got the F1 TV thing where we can watch all the old races. We've got stuff shared on YouTube, and that's all good stuff. So it's not as bad as what it would normally be. But I'm just looking forward to racing getting back underway.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I mean, for me, obviously, I got myself a new microphone, like a professional microphone, so the sound is better. And I got myself Photoshop elements, so I'm learning a bit of Photoshop, so and I can see a definite improvement in my thumbnails, and that sort of keeps me going from getting, because that keeps my anxiety away. So so YouTube and sort of doing collaborations with you and everybody, with Tomo and Mike, really keep my anxieties away. So sort of that helped me out quite a bit as well. But I can't wait for the season to start again. And the final point I want to make is: do you think that Racing Point, or Aston Martin, as they will be known in 2021, have got, or will they be a front-running team, and will they win the championship?
I guess it depends on the personnel that they have, because money won't be an issue. And that'll be great, to have another team at the forefront. But obviously, I think the regulations should be set in place to make it closer anyway. But I think really, you got the issue of Ferrari being as selfish as they ever have been in life. But nevertheless, it'll be great to see a fast enough team out there with a lot of money and backing behind them. That's what Aston Martin will have. In regards to the personnel behind them, a driver pairing such as Perez and Stroll, that's debatable as to whether or not they can get an absolute front-running car to the drivers and constructors title. And it's not to say they don't have the ability to do that. It's just, the other combinations that you've got, you've got Verstappen at Red Bull, Leclerc at Ferrari. They've got very tough competition. And if they had Toto Wolff on board, at the very least Toto Wolff on board for team principal, that's going to boost their chances, because he's been obviously a fundamental part of the Mercedes team, which has just dominated Formula One for the past 6 years. So, yeah, I think if he goes there, it's certainly going to boost their chances. If you get Lewis Hamilton in there, and obviously the team's been very good ever since its inception of creating a car that's been competitive for as little money as they have. But with the increased cash flow coming in, you'd have to say that they'll only just get better and better. So you put all that together, they've got great prospects, but ultimately it's down to the people that they put in the team.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I can see happening?
Hmm?
You know what I can see happening? And I want your opinion on that. I think Mercedes is gonna pull out after this season, and then Aston Martin all the personnel that used to be Mercedes is gonna jump over to Aston Martin, and then they're just gonna carry on like they did with Mercedes.
Yeah, you know what? That's definitely a valid idea. It's something that I didn't really think of before. And the more and more you think about it, you're just like, oh yeah, this definitely can happen. And of course, Aston will be able to get all those Mercedes personnel. And again, that's where I say, like, if they get the right people behind them, then that's going to shoot them to the moon. So, yeah, I can definitely see Mercedes pulling out. I definitely can, especially due to the current situation.
And then we're gonna have another Brawn 2009 on our hands, hey?
Potentially. I mean, the thing with Brawn obviously is that the team was bought by $1 with a guy with a goatee, and it put that team to the front of the grid when really, everyone should have been. Well, this should have been a harsh word, but would have normally been out of work. So that was a fairy tale sort of thing, and I guess it can sort of happen with the Aston Martin name coming back to Formula One. Yeah, it's a definitely a valid theory, so long as the pieces all fit together, and may very well happen. And I think the catalyst for it all would be about whether or not Mercedes wants to be in Formula One next year, and it's looking increasingly unlikely.
You are the first person that agrees with me on that one.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess I'm sort of like, over the years of watching Formula One and just seeing how a lot of things don't really pan out as they're supposed to, you got to sort of be open-minded to things. Obviously, it's the internet, and if you have an opinion on something, immediately people say, "No, you're wrong," or "You're stupid," and everything like that. But really, at the end of the day, it's just a view on things, and I can't know for sure whether or not something will happen. But if the circumstances were to come into effect, then that is something that definitely can happen. So, yeah. For sure.
And final question for you: what was your first Formula One race you ever saw?
First Formula One race I ever saw. Oh, jeez. I don't know, because that's way back when I was like 6 or 7 years old. Oh gosh. I know that I was watching And back then, I didn't actually have access to the live Grand Prix because obviously being 6 or 7, we don't normally stay up until midnight over here in New Zealand to watch the races. But I know that in terms of highlights and stuff, I was watching the 2003 season quite a lot. But the first time I was actually watching races live was 2007-ish.
Yeah.
2008 was my earliest memory of watching a live race, the Brazilian Grand Prix, and I remember I was just shaking like a leaf at the on the final lap because I'm still a Lewis Hamilton fan. I think he's a bloody good driver, and I like drivers that can drive well. Hence why Lance Stroll's not high on my list. But I was just shaking like a leaf. I was like, oh god, Hamilton's lost the race, and all of a sudden I just see Glock there. I'm like, wait, what? Oh yeah, no, Hamilton's won.
Yeah,
yeah. So that's I'd say earliest memories of watching Formula One was sort of 2002 to 2003. First times watching races live properly 2008.
Do you know what my winner was?
Which one was it?
The Imola '94 one.
Oh, good grief! That was your first one.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And I can remember Jordan from the F1 debate show.
Yeah, good old Jordan.
He said to me, "I'm surprised it didn't put you off Formula One for life." But
yeah, that was of all the Formula One Grand Prix to watch. Hey, at least it wasn't 2005 United States Grand Prix where you have 6 cars on the grid. It's like, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
But,
I mean, and the very final question is, who do you think is going to be the greatest driver in Formula One history? Senna.
Sorry, go on.
Senna, Schumacher, or Hamilton?
Oh, that's a hard one. Because I'm a big Senna fan, and I was a Schumi fan growing up, and now I'm a Hamilton fan. So I'm a fan of all 3 drivers, and it's so hard because that's why I made the series top 10 drivers of the decade, because it's such a hard thing to judge. Who's the best driver in all time? Because they all eras sort of required different skills. The 1950s, you had to be more physical, more brutal, and you had to be more committed. 1960 was sort of a bit more of a hardcore version of that. 70, obviously, cars got grippier and safer and such. In 1980, it was turbocharged tanks, because they were big things to lump around. And then the 90s sort of paved way for the upcoming seasons. And obviously now we're in a time where we're driving over-gripped vacuum cleaners. So it does depend upon the decade. But overall, it's so hard to judge. Good grief. Who would you put there? Who would you put on top of all 3 drivers? In a pure driver's talent perspective, Senna, in terms of all round, oh god, that's hard. That's really hard. I'd say, as of now, Michael Schumacher.
I'm a great Michael Schumacher fan. Yeah. I'm an absolute Michael Schumacher fan, and before, if you asked me that question like 6 months ago, because I said I did a video about, I started a bit of a series like the drivers comparisons, and I did one Hamilton versus Schumacher, and I also did one Senna versus Hamilton, I think. And my argument, my answer to that question, it's not. You can't really. There's, as you said, you can't. There's always different eras of technology, and that's why you can't sort of come So you can't answer that question because, back in the day when Senna was driving, back in the day when Senna was driving, Formula One was different, and then when Schumacher was driving, it was different again. At least in his heyday, and now Hamilton is obviously number one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. So, thank you, Josh, for agreeing to come on and have that chat with me. It was great. And if you haven't checked out Josh's YouTube channel, do give him a like and a subscribe. He does awesome stuff. And help him grow. Even though he's got a lot more subscribers than I have, but it's been great, Josh.
Yeah, no worries, man. Thanks very much for having me on, mate. I'm hoping that your channel gets toward the 1,000 subscribers. But again, as I've said to you before, just you're all. And I say this to any other YouTubers out there. You're going to get detractors all the time who are just going to, just torment you. But the important thing is that you enjoy what you're doing, and that's the important thing at the end of the day. You've got. Was it 400 and how many subscribers have you got so far?
490.
490, right. Well, that's a heck of a lot more than any of those detractors would ever say, And the important thing is that you're dedicated to the platform and you're always doing stuff. And you know what? That's, as I said, you're a legend in the F1 community for doing that, mate. So keep at it and look forward to seeing you hit the 100,000. Well, 100,000 is a big number, but at the very least, 1,000 subscribers. So keep at it, mate.
So because the reason behind me doing YouTube is actually because when I first started, my doctor and I just thought, how can we treat my anxiety? So he said to me, get yourself a camera and talk about Formula One because you love Formula One. So I thought if I might as well film it and put it on YouTube. So, and I haven't had anxiety ever since. So that's helped me from a medical point of view as well. And every single like and subscribe and a comment means a lot to me. So give me sort of recognition in what I'm doing, because I really do enjoy doing these videos. So I hope that some of your subscribers jump over to my channel and give me a like and a subscribe, because I really enjoy doing these videos and I really enjoy meeting new people and collaborating. So cheers to you, Josh, for agreeing to do this collaboration with me.
No worries, mate. And you stay safe, eh?
I will do. You too, mate. And I speak to you soon. Yeah.
No worries, mate.
Bye.
Yes, yep.